Welcome back, everybody. I'm Travis with Linux Academy. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to go and build out a Docker file using instructions. Now, over on my right, I do have a listing of all the instructions, and we'll make our way through them. I don't want to bore you to death by just going and reading what these instructions are. I'd rather talk about them as we start using them in a Docker file. Before we go and start building out our Docker file, there's a few things I need to do first. We're going to be cloning a repository that has some source code that will be copied over to our image. So I need to install Git. Execute sudo yum install git-y. You will probably be prompted to enter your password. Next, we're going to go and create a new directory to go and store all of our Docker files. Go and execute make dir docker_images. Now go and cd into that directory. Create another directory called weather app, and cd into that as well. Now we're going to go and clone the weather application into the src directory. And we do this by executing git clone, the repository URL, and the directory that the repository will be cloned into. I can execute an ls, and you can see that we now have the source directory. So let's go and create the Docker file. Over to the right are the instructions we'll be adding to the file. Okay, so let's go and take a look at what we have. This very first line here, I have just a description of what this Docker file is going to do. We're going to go and create an image for the weather app. So now we start getting into our instructions. When we go and create a Docker file, we're always going to include the from instruction first. This is going to go and set our base image. Next, I'm adding some additional metadata by using the label instruction. Typically, labels are defined using a domain name in reverse. So we'll start off with com and then Linux Academy, followed by the name of the label. In this instance, it's version, and I'm setting version to v1.1. In this example, I'm just using something very generic here. I'm using org.label-schema.version, and then I'm setting version to v1.1. We use the run instruction to execute shell commands on the container when it's being built. In this instance, I'm going to go and create a new directory called var node, and this is where I'm going to be storing my code. We can execute all kinds of commands using the run instruction. This can include things like apt-get update, yum install, apt-get install. Basically, any command that exists on the container can be executed through run. Now, there's two ways we can go and copy files or directories over to our container, and that is using add and copy. For the most part, they are very similar. Both are going to take a source, which is what you want copied over, and then a destination, where you want those files or directories copied to. However, add does have additional functionality. For example, we have the ability to go and supply a URL as our source, but that's not the case with copy. Now, Docker has some pretty extensive documentation on the differences between add and copy, so I'll have a link in the description so you can go and check it out for yourself. We're able to go and set the working directory by using the workdir instruction. If we use the following instructions, run, cmd, entry point, copy, and add, it will be applied within the working directory. And the next line is a good example of that. I have the run instruction that is going to go and execute an npm install. Because var node is set up as the working directory, this command will be executed from within var node. So with that being said, what I could have done is I could have gone and created my directory first, then set var node as the working directory. And after that, I could have gone and copied source over into dot rather than var node. Now, before we can go and publish a port, we need to make sure that it's exposed first. This instruction tells Docker that a container is going to be listening on the specified port, and I can't specify more than one port. And to do this, I simply supply a list of ports that is delimited by spaces. And the final instruction I have is cmd. This sets the default command and parameters that will be executed when the container starts. One thing that is very important that you need to know is that cmd is a singleton. It can only be supplied once per Docker file. Alternatively, there's entry point, and this configures our container to be an executable. We'll be talking about the differences between cmd and entry point in a future lesson. When executing a Docker container run, we do have the ability to overwrite the default command, which is not the case with entry point. All we have to do is supply the new command at the very end. And we've already done this before. Now we're ready to go and build the image. But before we move on, I want to point out that we haven't covered all the instructions yet. We'll cover more as we move through this section. To build an image, we're going to be using the docker image build command. Use the T flag to specify the name and tag of the image. Right here. So the name is going to be Linux Academy /weather app. and then v1 is going to be the tag, and separate them by using the colon. Because the Docker file is located in the weather app directory, I can end this command with a period. However, I could use the F flag and specify a path to a Docker file instead. The build is going to run through each instruction in order. It's going to start with the from, and then it's going to end with cmd. Each instruction creates a layer, and each layer creates a container. All these containers are just the intermediate steps till we get to the final results, and by default, all these additional containers will be deleted. Our build is now done, and our image was built successfully. Now I'm going to go and list my images. And you can see right here, we have our new image with the tag. Now that we have our new image, let's go and create a container using it. So I'm going to execute a Docker container run. I'm going to use the D flag to run the container in the background. I'm going to name the container weather app 1, and then I'm going to go and set up a port mapping. I'm going to map port 8081 over to 3000 on the container. Port 3000 is what we exposed in the Docker file. Finally, we go and define the image that will be used, which is Linux Academy /weather-app:\v1. Now let's check and make sure the container is running. And it looks like it is. Now I should be able to verify that my container is running properly by executing a curl on localhost :8081. And we are getting HTML back, so everything is working properly. That's it. We successfully built an image. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how we can go and set environment variables, as well as using arguments to go and parameterize an image build. Go ahead and mark this lesson complete.